Hi, this is Dr. Kat Vlies at Central New Mexico Community College. We're going to continue with the skeletal muscles, and we're getting closer to learning exactly how a skeletal muscle cell is stimulated to then contract so that the filaments are actually doing their sliding. So that means that it's time for us to take a closer look at those cells that belong to the nervous system that send that stimulation to our muscle cells to contract. So what I would like to do now next is very briefly go over the anatomy of a typical nerve cell that innervates a skeletal muscle cell. And by no means are we going to go into great detail about nervous tissue yet, because we'll do that when we get to the nervous system. But by just pointing out some major structures, it'll help you visualize things a little bit better. So the cells that are part of the nervous system that are excitable, just like muscle cells are called nerve cells. Or more often than not, you will hear them being referred to as neurons. Now, there are all kinds of neurons, but the ones that innervate the skeletal muscle cells belong to the somatic nervous system, more specifically the somatic motor nervous system. And so these neurons that innervate the skeletal muscles are called somatic motor neurons. And they have a typical look to them. Now remember that we're going to need to send signals to the muscles. And these signals arise from the central nervous system that is either the brain or the spinal cord. So signals start there, and they then, that is electrical signals, and they then reach the effectors, which are, in our situation, our skeletal muscles. And so therefore, we refer to these as motor neurons. Motor information always leaves the central nervous system to go to the effectors. We could also call these somatic efferent neurons. That would be a synonym, efferent. So if this is where we find the central nervous system, let's say, and all of this is in the peripheral nervous system, then we would find that part of our somatic motor neuron is located inside of the central nervous system. And it's the very beginning of our motor neuron, our somatic motor neuron. Now, motor neurons, or neurons in general, look pretty funky. They're very, very long cells very often, certainly somatic motor neurons. And so they have what we call a cell body located in the central nervous system, and it has all these branches that we call dendrites. Dendrites literally meaning looking like tree branches. This is also where we find the nucleus and where we find most of the organelles. We have then this very long structure, this long arm or branch coming out of our cell body that leaves the central nervous system and becomes part of the peripheral nervous system, and that we call the axon. Sometimes we call this the fiber as well, or the nerve fiber, I should say. So once again, those anatomists are using the term fiber. Eventually, this axon is going to start reaching a muscle organ. And when it does, it starts to branch and gives rise to what we call axonal terminals. And I'll just draw a few. There could be a handful or hundreds, usually lots of them are formed. And the ends have little bulbs on them, like so. So we call these axonal terminals with synaptic bulbs. And you'll see why they're called synaptic bulbs. They help form a synapsis. Now, each one of these axonal terminals with their synaptic bulbs is going to synapse or form a close connection with one muscle cell, with one skeletal muscle fiber. And I'm just, again, going to sketch this. Imagine that we're inside of our big muscle organ, and all of these axonal terminals are spreading throughout our muscle organ. We're going to see that each one of these is going to synapse with a different muscle cell. So each one of these cylinders I am adding is a different muscle cell. Remember, skeletal muscle cells are electrically isolated, so that means that each muscle cell must have its own axonal terminal, and I'm just showing this arc right now just to illustrate which axonal terminal belongs to which muscle cell. And so this, if I enlarged one of these bulbs, axonal terminals with their bulbs, and then we have here our muscle cell, this close encounter right here is a synapsis that we typically better refer to as our neuromuscular junction. I just lost my microphone. I'm wondering if you could still hear me. I'm going to assume that you did. So let's wrap it up here. Thanks for watching.